First time this morning, and we'll get through it as we can. Luckily, Tony's talk is organized. It's organized and logical, which is not how I normally approach talks, but it might be easier for us to get through this. He's presented the timeline here. Cornell research, of course, started back in the mid-1950s. First gobies in North America in the early 90s. Percentage in Oneida, early 90s. Gobies from this on. Pointed out for us came in around between 13, 14, and 15. I'm not clear on why the other land things there. Probably a prod to me for my total disdain for the orange and everything. I'd just like to point out that on that same time frame there would be 5 North Carolina basketball games. And were there room in the more recent time frame 5 consecutive losses by Syracuse, North Carolina. That's not really what I think Tony was getting at. So we do pretty good science at Cornell. When gobies were in the lake, we didn't catch them. Once they got in the lake, we did start to catch them. And in most of the years, I think Iman did such a good job, I don't need to go into this much. They were at the last barrier for the better part of 6 or 7 or 8 years, so we were predicting to our clients that they would be in the lake any second now. It took about 10 years for that second to elapse, but then they got in and expanded. The anglers reported in 2013, reliable reports. We sampled the snot out of that. When we sampled the snot out of fish dikes, they had to be at very low densities for us not to see them. During that year, 2014, they showed up and the numbers took off. 2015 and 16, they took off again to catch them in the trawl and the seine. So we have a new invasive species. This is our bread and butter in Oneida long-term monitoring program to try to make sure that the state's most important walleye fishery is safe and secure. Unfortunately, we're on the canal, so every now and then we get something new that goes in. The potential roles in the ecosystem is predators on lower trophic levels, competitors with fish that occupy the same niche, but also potentially as prey for the piscivores. We have looked at some round goby diets. I think Lauren Mott looked at a few. As literature suggests, they eat dry-sided mussels and amphipods, a fair number of brahmins. I'm not clear on the species of fish. Were you the one that found fish, or was that Lauren?
I know I found, I think, one. I don't know if I could even identify it.
Yeah. Clearly, larval juvenile fish have been digested to the point we can identify with fish, not a huge deal. We've not yet seen any fish eggs in them, but that, again, another thing that we digest quickly enough that we might not be able to identify. But a very typical diet for gobies in Oneida is seen elsewhere. Because we sample everything, there's some conjecture that we have descent surveys, zebra mussel densities, starting the year after they were first discovered there, so we have a long-term record of mussel densities. Some speculation gobies have the ability to impact mussel populations. I'm a skeptic that that could happen. Here's a picture. I think in this picture, Brian's reminding Tony that North Carolina has won 5 national championships. Did I have that right? Sure. Okay, so here's our mussel history. Zebra mussels discovered by a diver in 1991, peaked in 1992, more or less stable densities since the mid-90s. Quagga mussels first detected in 2009 or 10. Based on the size of those mussels, we think they got in the lake in 2005 or 6. They rapidly have displaced zebras almost entirely. And then, if you're the fan of the gobies can impact mussels trend, you can see that drop off in overall mussel densities towards the end. More compellingly, we have the size distributions of the mussels from our mussel surveys, and you can see 2013, before we had gobies, a nice representation of small size mussels, and then bigger sizes. In 2015, after the goby densities were quite high, the smaller mussels disappear. This would suggest that gobies are having an impact, and John Cooper, who may be in the audience, is analyzing our survey from this year and says we're still missing those small mussels. We've done a few sets of experiments, once with the post-op and once with an intern. Gobies do like the smaller mussels, 10, 11 millimeters. At the upper end, they really like to eat in 6 and 8 millimeters. In terms of species preference, my sense is size matters first, but all things being equal, if quaggas and zebras are the same size, they prefer the quagga mussels, presumably because they have thinner shells and less robust attachment. So I guess this was a point where I need to admit that I'll add the inability of gobies to impact mussel populations to the long and growing list of things I've been wrong about. It does look like they might have the potential. If you get 2 or 3 years where they eat all the small guys, at some point you're running out of big guys. We tell anglers that every day, and it must apply to mussels too. We also have a long-term record of benthic samples. To look at our benthos, we know gobies are eating in those, and then note those last couple of years, it looks like we're having drop-offs in amphipod densities, ostracod densities, and I guess native clams were that, and also snails. So that's what we talked about, they eat snails, so it looks like they may potentially be having an impact on some of our invertebrates. Turns out amphipods are quite an important prey item for yellow perch and white perch, and their occurrence in the diets of those species has dropped off dramatically in the last year or so after the gobies get there. That would be a kind of confirmation that perhaps amphipod densities have dropped off a bit. We'll see what the implications for that are in terms of growth of those early life stages of those fish, even though both those species even as both young and adults. We also talked about competition, potentially displacing and hurting populations of tessellated darter and log perch species that occupy the same habitats that gobies prefer. Catches of both those species have been quite low in recent years, but my take on this graph is that started in about 2000, which precedes the goby arrival by quite a bit. So it's going to be hard for me to pin down on gobies right now. So Tony might have thought through some logic on that, but that looks like, given it starts in 2000, that's something we'll be able to blame on me because that's when I got there. So take that instead of the gobies. Trout perch have also dropped off the last couple of years. They've always been fairly erratic. They occupy the soft substrates, would be less likely, or less logical how gobies do that. Yellow perch also a benthic species, but not territorial, and don't appear to be being impacted by gobies. But time will tell in terms of what benthic species do in response to the gobies being there. There's another view of the catch race. You can see the darters and log perch kind of dropping off, and we'll see what happens. Young perch doing what they've always done. Okay, now are gobies good food for the fish we have out there? Iman did a good job of talking about the young of year largemouth and smallmouth bass and what they're doing. Tony's looked at actually John Forney's one who's been looking at the walleye diets because he comes in work, he's been retired for about 115 years now. He still comes in work and does the walleye diets because he cares or he doesn't trust us to do them right. You can see that between 2013 and 2014, the 8 species that were not gobies, again, they failed to take advantage of a species that was not present in the lake. They took gizzard chance, but after 2015 and 16, when gobies were very high numbers, they became quite important in the walleye diet. So it looks like the young walleye are all over it, and that's a good thing. Gobies spawn multiple times a year, so if the walleye are in a place where they can eat them, that means they're going to be able to have a nice long summer of piscivores. And one of the questions when we look at the round goby showing up in diets of our predators is it they're just being substituted for something they used to eat, or are they additive? If they're additive, then that means we might have implications for growth. If they're just substituting, it just means they're eating something different. In this case, it kind of looks like that the goby consumption is additive to what the walleyes were doing before. They are eating gobies in preference to what they used to eat, but they're eating more fish than they used to eat, which would suggest that the gobies aren't just a different food, but a food that's allowing them to be more successfully piscivorous. And we'll see if that improves growth. The 2016 growth rates of walleye were high relative to recent years, but certainly not high relative to the days when Forney was in charge of the program and took better care of things. A good walleye year class, we think, involves needing to be about 180 millimeters or more going into that first winter. Our walleye have not been doing that with much success at all in recent years. If the gobies contribute to good growth, we're going to get back up there and start pushing out more good year classes. We also look at adult piscivores from our gill net samples, so this would be a mix of everybody who eats fish. You can see a little tick up in percent fish containing prey in 2015 and 2016. Again, we have an additive and substitute thing, and it looks like that tick up is because of the gobies, so they're eating what they used to eat, and add gobies to that, and it looks like it's allowing more successful piscivory by the adult fish. Okay. We had a graduate student, Willie Fetzer, who is here. He's in Wisconsin now, working on the Great Lakes. He did a 3-year study of predator diets primarily aimed at looking at their impacts on the yellow perch dynamics. We had no gobies back then. He was young and energetic, so the study involved going out at sunset, electrofishing, going out before the sun came up, electrofishing, going out and trawling before the sun came up. He got his methods through to publication, so we said, well, we'll compare post-gobies to pre-gobies using Willie's methods, and presumably that will make it easier to get people to buy what we find coming on the back side of that. So here's what Willie found: largemouth bass, big fans of age 1 yellow perch in the spring, yellow perch and crayfish later in the summer, smallmouth bass, big fans of crayfish, and then shift over to gizzard shad after the shad spawned in mid to late summer. Smallmouth a little further offshore than largemouth, but that's what they were up to before the gobies got there. He did inshore and offshore walleye, and walleye, as we know in Oneida Lake, pretty much tied into the yellow perch population, either H1 or H0, depending on who's out there, and really big fans of gizzard shad once they get out there. And this is what we found this past year. Hopefully we can keep it up for 2 more years. We're not as young as Willie. I can't do night sampling anymore because I fall asleep. But I was there for the morning sample, so we hopefully can pull this off. But we can see the gobies start to show up in the diets of almost everything. It looks like the largemouth were all over by the end of the year. The chain pit roll, very small sample size, but they were really big fans of goby in midsummer. But again, just kind of make the point that we're seeing the gobies start to show up in diets, and ultimately 2 more years, maybe after the population of gobies increases a bit more. From Nudo talked to our Oneida Lake Association, and our understanding is that it's another 5 to 6 years before the population peaks. So there's some chance the gobies will get even more, but we'll be able to report back in 2 more years of how things have shifted from Willie's time to the gobies being there. So I'll talk about something entirely different. I didn't flip the slide for it. Here's inshore offshore walleye. So the gobies are showing up in the walleye diets, but the gizzard shad appear to be still their favorite thing. My guess is that's pretty much a lifestyle decision. If you're up in the water column eating gizzard shad or down the bottom eating gobies, I wouldn't expect many walleye to go back and forth. We saw a few of them, but we've got a long history of being tied into that late summer, fall gizzard shad boom. And while a few are using the gobies, it looks like when the shad are there, that's just what they were doing. We're going to keep on doing it. And the cormorants like them. We knew this from the Niagara River and the Great Lakes. The presence of cormorants and their impacts on walleye and perch cause our anglers as much angst and sleepless nights as watching the news causes me now. Hopefully we can tell them, you go ahead and sleep easy because they're going to eat up gobies and gizzard shad and leave your fish alone. Though, if I understand their math right, if 1 cormorant eats 1 walleye, it crashes to your class. So until we can make that little orange line go well together, we're not going to be able to get them off our backs. But it does look like the gobies might serve some benefit as an additional buffer for the species that anglers actually care about in terms of cormorant predation. But the minute the anglers start feeling good about life, and then we get this. We've had a creel study going on for quite some time. Walleye catch rates bumping around between 0.2 and 0.3 most years, and then this year they had a bad year. Our creel clerk also had a bad year. Our guys aren't real shy with their opinions, and they shared their miserable moods with him and said we can't catch fish anymore. But first sign that the one speculation that the goby's been out there might impact angler catch rates. Did not affect the bass guys as much. Something to do with the fishery. You think both our walleye fishery, which is by far the dominant fishery in the system, 80 to 90% of the effort, 70% primarily local guys who've been fishing there for 50 years, taught by their dads and their granddads. Their preferred fishing technique is bouncing worms off the bottom in deep water. That's exactly the wrong way to fish if you've got a lake full of gobies. Their adaptability has not been very impressive. When the zebra mussels got in, created weed banks. They grew up fishing the buoy line, deep water, worms. Weeds came in, walleyes moved to the weed line, anglers, buoy line, worms. Gobies are in, anglers, buoy line, bottom, worms, and that's affecting them. Bass guys tend to be about 50% from out of the region, out of state. So they're fishing other waters, the Great Lakes with gobies, so they're already kind of tuned in and appear to be more adaptable. But we'll see what happens with our walleye guys. I have no idea. first I was surprised, and I wasn't the only guy that had a picture of Trump in his talk yesterday. I'm thinking that Tony just wanted to say these two facial expressions reflect the moods of our anglers, given what's going on. My preferred candidate in the election was the Sweet Meteor of Death, who ran a very effective Twitter campaign, but didn't win the day. Nonetheless, the anglers who normally blame reduced catch rates on there's not enough walleye out there and we're messing up. We've told them over and over again that the number of walleye in our lake doesn't affect catch rates at all. This is what Corny did back in the dark ages that looks at the exploitation of the walleye versus growth rates. And you see this when walleye grow well, exploitation drops. When walleye don't grow well, exploitation goes up. We revisited this a few years back, looking at walleye growth rate as a surrogate for prey availability, because we had some problems mixing gizzard shad and yellow perch, trawl versus acoustics to get that. But it clearly says to us, when there's lots of food out there, it's really hard to catch a walleye. When there's no food out there, it's easy to catch a walleye. So even with any year, we see better catch rates early before the gizzard shad hatch, and the catch rates kind of bottom out. With gobies there, it's possible to be so much food year in and year out, all year long, the catch rates will suffer pretty dramatically until our guys try different techniques. But this is going to be a concern. The anglers have been begging us to get the walleye population back up to the 1 million fish that Forney had for them. And it could happen. Their exploitation rate's about 15 to 20% of the population every year. If they can't kill them anymore, population will increase. But they're not going to believe me because they're not going to be able to catch them. I'll say, well, you got your 1 million fish again, but they're not going to catch them. I'll make them very happy. And there's Tony's summaries. It looks like the gobies might in fact be capable of having an impact on the dress edge densities out there, certainly impacting the size distribution right now. There are reductions in benthic fish species and invertebrate densities. Invertebrate densities are pretty easy to tie to gobies. Fish dynamics perhaps less so, but we'll continue to look at that. They are being eaten by our piscivores out there. Time will tell if that enhances growth and survival of those piscivores. And they appear to be having an impact on angler catch rates. Time again to tell whether that was actually a goby phenomenon last year or not, and we'll get another opportunity to test our anglers' flexibility and how they approach somebody. Again, Chris Dundo's work, we saw him talk, said the gobies will likely not peak before they start declining abundance until another 4 or 5 years from now, so we'll have an opportunity to see what the impacts are even more gobies out there than we have now. And then the classic conclusion in an audience that includes your funding agency, we really need to keep looking at this stuff in order to give you the definitive answer on what it all means. And that's that.
Questions? Where are you seeing goby? Everywhere in Charles? Is there any spatial?
Not that much. Our sense is, like the literature would suggest, that they're in the shoaly hard substrates early and then expand out during the summer. Obviously, we're not trawling the shoals, so our catch rates of gobies in the trawl tend to start out low and then pick up in the summer. When they peak, it's usually in August or September. So my guess is they're using habitats where we don't trawl early and kind of spread out in habitats that we can trawl out. But they're all over the lake once we start catching.
All right, let's thank you. We're at break, right? See you all in a minute.
You want to get a what?